Agnes and I met in the 9th grade and quickly started dating, becoming a strong couple by the 10th grade. Throughout high school, we had an even relationship, culminating in the classic moment of losing our virginity at graduation. After that, we couldn't get enough of each other, using every opportunity for intimacy. By the 11th grade, we had already discussed the possibility of marriage and decided to wait until college to tie the knot. But college seems to have changed Agnes. In high school, our classmates admitted that Agnes and I had a serious relationship that scared off unwanted attention from guys. But when we went to college, where most of the students were from different places, Agnes stopped being perceived by others as mine. Instead, she began to be perceived as an attractive girl and was often approached by guys. Although I knew about it, there was little I could do to prevent it. Agnes and I had different specialties and different schedules, so usually our paths crossed only in the evenings after classes and work. I noticed a change in Agnes's behavior during these meetings. She seemed more flirtatious than usual. More than once, I watched her chat and laugh with other guys while I was on the opposite side of the square, unnoticed. It also happened that I caught a glimpse of her in the cafeteria with different guys, once with one, another time with two. It was only much later that I realized that I had never seen her with other girls, only with guys. At that time, I didn't care because we were a couple in love planning to get married. She was a beautiful girl who naturally attracted attention, but she always showed me that she was mine every night when we were together. Years later, after graduating from university, finding a job in our specialty, and getting married, we began a happy family life. For almost 6 years, I embodied the image of fat, stupid, and happy until reality hit me like a ton of bricks. An accidental incident at work served as a wake-up call. As I was sitting at my desk, Molly from the post office handed me a stack of documents to look at. Looking through the documents, I couldn't help but wonder why exactly this file related to Wally Bergman's account ended up in my hands. Wally, a man I've known since high school, was put in charge of this account. But having delved into its contents, I soon discovered a significant error that went unnoticed. After a short mental calculation, I realized that the forecasts were not justified by almost $3 million. When I reached for the calculator to clarify the exact amount, Wally burst into my office in a panic, asking if I had seen the file he needed for a presentation at Apex Group in half an hour. It turned out that the file was at my fingertips, although I didn't know why. Although I reviewed it, I had serious doubts about sending it to Apex. I showed him what I had found, and although I knew it was usually just a figure of speech, I could swear his face turned white. "Oh my God, Rob. I could have been fired because of this." He quickly took the file from me and hurried to make changes. It was Thursday, and Agnes always stayed late to give out Friday's paycheck, so I stuck to my schedule and went to BU Bar after work to eat half a kilo of meat and drink a couple of beers. As I was finishing my burger and starting my second beer, Wally came in, noticed me, and took a seat at my table. He asked Sue for a beer and asked her to bring him my bill, saying it was the least he could do after I saved his job. I didn't mind because it wasn't a very large amount. We talked about work for a while and then moved on to other topics. Suddenly, Wally completely changed the subject. "I have a question for you, Rob," he said. "I know it's none of my business, but you're a good guy, and I really like your company. I'm wondering why you tolerate Agnes's behavior. I don't quite understand what you mean. Why are you letting her cheat on you?" "What do you mean, Wally?" He looked at my expression, realized his mistake, and said, "Oh, you didn't know." He tried to get up, but I stopped him and insisted that he stay. "Wally, you can't just drop the bomb and then try to leave. Sit down and tell me everything." Reluctantly, he sat down and said, "I don't really know how to say this, Rob." I encouraged him to be honest and share information. "I thought you knew everything, Rob. It's been 10 years. How can you not know, Rob? It surprises me that you don't understand anything." "What don't I understand, Wally?" "That Agnes is a walking girl." I was speechless, unable to digest the information. "I'm sorry I spoke up, Rob. I should have kept quiet." I managed to get out of the state of shock and encouraged Wally to continue. "How did you find out about this and how long ago?" "I found out about it in my last year of school, and I know because I'm one of the many who was with her." I was completely overwhelmed by the information I received, but at the same time, I felt an irresistible desire to learn more. Please start at the beginning, Wally, I begged, and don't miss anything. The story that unfolded in front of me was shocking, not only for its content but also for the fact that it had been happening for more than 10 years without my knowledge. There wasn't even the slightest hint of it. According to Wally, it was 2 weeks after graduation when I went to my cousin George's house, as usual. I immediately entered the house and went to George's bedroom, expecting to find him at the computer. But George wasn't at the computer, he was sitting on Agnes. I stood and watched them. They both noticed me, but neither of them told me to leave. I quietly undressed and waited for my turn. George and I took turns studying with Agnes until she finally stopped us. She mentioned that she needed to freshen up before meeting you after her shift at Jessup Market. George and I continued to date Agnes when you were at work until George began a serious relationship with Melody Martin. She was in an intimate relationship with me for a few weeks, but when I came to her one day, she was already infatuated with Mike Bella and Justin Walsh. Without hesitation, I joined their escapade. We made fun of her until she had to leave to meet you. I wasn't the only one she shared herself with because she'd had a few boyfriends before. I know you and I were buddies, but we weren't particularly close. In our tumultuous teenage years, when intercourse was the only thing we could think of, about you had something like a relationship, but I didn't think it was too serious. After all, if it was serious, would she sleep with everyone she saw? And nothing changed when we went to college. I remember that she had classes from Monday to Thursday and from Tuesday to Friday, and there were no classes on Wednesdays. The last lesson ended at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Monday, Thursday, and at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, Friday. I don't remember your schedule. After class, you would go to work, and Agnes would retire somewhere in the bedroom. Wednesday became known as all-day intimacy classes. This routine continued throughout school, regardless of the changing lesson schedule. Agnes always waited with her legs outstretched after class while you were working. This did not happen every day, but rather 2 or 3 times a week. Many of us guys were surprised when you and Agnes got married. We thought you knew about her extracurricular activities, but nevertheless, you decided to marry her. Many of us thought that you liked watching your girlfriend when she was with other men. Tyler even suggested that you and Agnes were fond of dating other couples, but no one could remember seeing you with another woman while Agnes was often seen with other men. I didn't even know about it, Wally. There wasn't even a hint. I hate to tell you this, Rob, but you probably didn't know that she regularly spends Thursday nights with Bob and Bill Howard, and on Tuesdays, when you're bowling, she goes out with Mark Willard. I do not know who else she spends time with, but I can say for sure that when you are busy with something, Agnes is also busy. I made a conscious decision to stop seeing her when she got married. It's one thing to have a relationship with a single woman, but a relationship with a married one is a completely different story. I do not know what to do or what to say, Wally, but I know I have to act. I finished my beer, stood up, and thanked Wally for the burger and for helping me see things more clearly. As I drove home, Wally's words rang over and over in my head. Can I trust what he told me? Part of me kept saying it couldn't be true. Agnes wouldn't betray me like that. But then I couldn't get rid of the doubts. Why was Wally lying to me? I had to admit that Wally had no reason to cheat on me. He knew that I would investigate his accusation, and if they turned out to be false, our working relationship would be in jeopardy. If he had lied, further cooperation would have been impossible, and Wally knew it perfectly well. The thought of having to work alongside him, knowing the truth about him and Agnes, was frightening, to say the least. Although I knew by myself that in adolescence, the temptation to engage in intimacy is very strong, and if a girl who has a boyfriend had offered it to me, then I probably would have agreed. But now, faced with the reality of potentially losing Agnes, I wondered what to do next. Would I have been able to survive a one-night stand or a short-term affair if Agnes had assured me that it wouldn't happen again? Maybe. But a 10-year affair? It was a completely different story. It seemed impossible to imagine a future with Agnes after such a betrayal. I was lying in bed, pretending to be asleep when Agnes returned from work. I pretended not to notice the touch of her hand, as I did not want to participate in her harassment. Although I had accepted her caresses in the past, now I realized how awkward I was. The next morning, I got up early, made coffee, and read the newspaper before Agnes woke up. She asked me what happened last night. I came home excited and ready, but I found you were already in bed, which was unusual for you, Rob. You explained that you didn't feel well because you ate something, and that's why you went to bed early. I hope you're feeling better today. I need you to make up for last night by doing double work today. When I got to work, I called my school friend Felix Mirror, who now worked as a corporate lawyer, to ask him to recommend a lawyer to me. Oh no, he said, what's going on? This revelation shows that my hopes did not match reality. Your search for a divorce lawyer indicates that the relationship between you and Agnes is not what I thought. I thought you had an open marriage, given Agnes's actions and your obvious devotion to her. It would seem impossible to be so devoted if you didn't accept her behavior. Surprisingly, Felix, I only found out about Agnes's actions yesterday. After a short pause, Felix advised me to contact Tom Sweet and mention his name. I followed his advice and contacted Sweet, who agreed to meet with me at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He explained that my divorce options range from a peaceful breakup to a more aggressive approach. In our state, adultery is recognized as a valid reason for divorce, but for this, it is necessary to have concrete evidence. How do I find the necessary evidence? I asked. Without saying a word, he went to his desk, took out a card, and handed it to me. The card read Gaston Marshall, a private investigator whose office is conveniently located across the street. I can call him and see if he can see you right now, he suggested. Please, I replied. I want to deal with this as soon as possible. While Sweet was on the phone, I told him to start filing for divorce, promising to provide evidence as soon as it was received. 10 minutes later, Gaston Marshall was already discussing our next steps. Unfortunately, I had to maintain the appearance of a normal relationship with Agnes and not let her know that I was no longer the naive fool she was used to. Marshall said bluntly that to do this, we need to stick to our usual routine, no matter how disgusting it may seem. If we usually made love 3 or 4 times a week, then I had to continue to initiate it but without any emotional connection. The goal was simply to satisfy physical desires without breaking Agnes's habits. We wanted her to remain unaware of the changes in our relationship. Back at my office, I plucked up the courage and called Agnes at work. We usually had dinner on Fridays and breakfast together on Sundays. When I suggested dinner at the Trochee restaurant, she agreed. While we were enjoying our meal, I was the veal marsala and Agnes was rigatoni. The staff of the Marshall Investigation Department were busy with work, while I was enjoying a sip of Merlot. Marshall's words rang in my head. The desire to look for hidden cameras is quite natural, but resisting this desire is extremely important. If she figures it out, all our work will go down the drain. In addition, it will not be easy to behave at ease in the bedroom, especially if you are not naturally sociable. The security system is equipped with sound and motion sensors, so you will be filmed. Knowing that someone from my staff can see you, don't let that stop you. There is a switch that can turn off the system while you are at home, but people often forget to turn it on when they leave. I suggest you leave it as it is and imagine that you are a cheeky celebrity at work shooting a scandalous video. Later, I invited Agnes to have a drink and dance after dinner, but she refused. She insisted on going home so that I could make it up to her for disappointing her the night before. On the way back, she moved closer to me and unbuttoned my trousers. Please drive carefully, my love. Don't run into anything that might make me bite off something important. As much as I hated what Agnes was doing, my body couldn't help but enjoy it. Despite my disgust, I wanted her to continue. After a while, we returned home, and Agnes urged me to hurry to the bedroom. I couldn't follow Marshall's advice. There was no way I could pretend to be calm, knowing that the audience could be watching me. The idea that I should behave naturally during intimacy with Agnes seemed to me an impossible task. So, I found the switch as instructed and turned off the system, leaving my mobile phone on the car seat. I knew it would serve as a reminder to turn on the system when I left home. I don't know if Agnes noticed, but I didn't make love to her that night. I just did everything according to the instructions. Unfortunately, 1 round wasn't enough, and I had to go through 2 more before Agnes finally let me rest. I got ready for my daily run in the morning, and Agnes told me she wouldn't be home when I got back. She had an appointment with the hairdresser, which was supposed to keep her busy until about 2 o'clock. I've always wondered why her visits to the hairdresser last so long, from 9 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Agnes claimed that it was because she liked to gossip with other clients, and after that, she often went to lunch with them. But given the recent revelations, I couldn't help but suspect that she was dating one of her lovers either before or after the hairstyle. When I was about to leave, I did not forget to turn on the system switch, although I did not expect anything to happen while jogging. It was important for me to put things in order so that the system would be turned on when I was not at home. The switch controlled only the cameras, as the listening devices and the phone call were always active. After doing my usual 5-mile run, I returned home and headed to the basement where I took out the dictaphones that Marshall had placed in the closet above my workbench. I chose the basement as the perfect place because Agnes almost never went down there, especially to my work area. Inside the cabinet, there were 2 receivers, one for listening devices and phone calls, and the other for a DVD recorder, which recorded footage from wireless cameras. When I examined the recorder, my suspicions were confirmed. A voice on the phone announced plans for a secret date. "Hello, good morning, darling. Are we still meeting today?" "You bet. My wife took the kids to the zoo, so we have until 6 o'clock in the evening. You know I can't stay that long. I have to get home by 2 o'clock. If I'm late, Rob might start to get interested. He's already started asking why I don't come home until 2 o'clock. Let's skip the appointment with the hairdresser and meet up to get everything done on time." But what am I going to say to Rob when he asks why I've been gone so long and I haven't done my hair? I really want to spend more time with you, but I'll have to be content with what I have. I immediately recognized my cousin Lou's voice. Back upstairs, I was furious, and I wondered how many more of my relatives she was dealing with. But I managed to calm down by the time Agnes returned home after visiting the hairdresser an hour later. I pretended to fall down the stairs in the basement and informed her that I had injured my back, possibly pulled a muscle. This excuse would allow me to avoid intimacy with her for a few days. The following Monday, I called Agnes at her office and informed her that I would be leaving town on Tuesday and would be out until Friday. It was clear that the trip had not been planned. Although 3 days could have been wasted, I didn't think so. I usually went once a month, and Agnes was always at home when I contacted her on the phone in the evening. Since my calls were at different times, usually between 7 and 10 o'clock, I doubted that she was waiting for my call to leave later. If she really cheated on me, as I heard, then most likely she did it during our conversation, perhaps even in our bed. At least, that's what I was hoping for. If she changes and the cameras record it, I will have the indisputable proof my lawyer needs for the divorce process. That evening, Agnes expressed a desire for intimacy, but I used my back pain as an excuse to avoid it. When she kissed me goodbye on Tuesday morning with a suitcase in her hand, I left on a business trip. After spending most of the day at work, I returned to our neighborhood and parked a block away from our house. Using my laptop, I entered the code provided by Marshall, which activated the program he had installed on my computer. By pressing a few keys, I was able to listen to the recording of the phone line. Hello, handsome. It's me. What happened? Hubby just left for a 3-day trip. Are you ready to spend 3 amazing nights with me? I take it as a yes. You're going to call Tony. I have to go to work. I'll be home by 6 o'clock. See you later. After turning off my laptop, I contacted Tom and instructed him to prepare the necessary papers for delivery by Thursday. I explained my special requirements for the assignment. Tom informed me that following my instructions would entail additional costs beyond the standard cost of services, but I insisted that I was willing to pay. Then I left the area and drove to the opposite end of the city, where I stayed in a motel for 3 days. There was a restaurant and bar next to the motel, which quickly became my favorite place. I found great pleasure in visiting the bar as it always brought a smile to my face. It was a country western style bar with a jukebox full of tunes that were perfect for dancing. Every evening, I noticed several unmarried ladies who were willing to dance with any man sitting alone. On my first visit, I was enjoying a drink at the bar when a stunning red-haired girl approached me. "Come on, honey, they're playing our song," she said, took my hand, and dragged me to the dance floor. While we were dancing, she made it clear that she had come just for the love of dancing and not for anything more. Her name was Rhonda, and she and her friends Laura and Shelby invited me to join them at the table after the dance. I danced with them in turn until 10:30 p.m., and then I had to leave. Rhonda mentioned that they often visit this place 2 or 3 times a week, and since I'm staying at a nearby motel, I'll probably see them again in the next 2 nights. The next day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I parked the car a block away from home and watched the recording made by wireless cameras. The night before, the 2 people who entered Agnes's bedroom were young men, much younger than her. I couldn't help but wonder if Agnes was seeking the energy and vitality of youth. There was nothing unusual about the actions captured on camera, the usual intimacy. But it was unpleasant for me to watch my wife behave in this way. The sight of Agnes having an intimate relationship with 2 men did not attract my attention. I was intrigued by the sound. To my surprise, there was silence. I half expected Agnes to mock me and my success in bed, but she didn't. The situation was the same as it always was on Wednesdays. The only mention of me was when one of the men expressed a desire to see Agnes more often. In response, Agnes explained that I am a priority when it comes to her time. I learned from Agnes that they needed to vacate the premises by 6 o'clock in the morning. I knew that none of the neighbors got up early, so it was important for them to leave before they were noticed. Both on Wednesday and Thursday morning, they left the house at exactly 6 o'clock, so I expected the same thing to happen on Friday. I contacted my lawyer and asked him to hand over the documents on Friday at 5:45 a.m. On Friday, I parked the car next to the house by 5:55 a.m. The front door opened, and 2 men got out after saying goodbye to Agnes, who was standing at the door. They noticed a man standing to the side. He went to the open door, handed something to Agnes, and then left, leaving her and her 2 companions to watch the retreating figure. I honked my horn in front of the house to get Agnes's attention, waved goodbye to her, and drove away. Among the papers handed to her was my letter saying that I no longer wanted to communicate with her without the presence of our lawyers. I had no desire to understand the reasons for her actions. I didn't want to hear that her love for me was sincere and communication with other people was meaningless. I refused to listen to explanations that we would be able to survive all this thanks to our love. I was not interested in listening to the typical excuses that cheaters use when they are caught. Despite my feelings, Agnes completely ignored the letter. 15 minutes after I drove away from the house, the phone rang. It was Agnes. All her calls went to voicemail. When I arrived at the office, I told the secretary not to take a single call from Agnes. When I was about to enter my office, I thought about it and turned back to her. And one more thing, Martha. If she comes in, please let her know that I'm not here. Tell her I've gone to meet a client. 5 minutes later, Martha poked her head in the door. I talked to Iris at the reception. If your wife shows up, she will warn me and take her place, and you will leave through the side door. You can go to the cafe and have a coffee until she leaves. I expressed my gratitude to her, and when she returned to her desk, I couldn't help but think that a competent secretary was truly invaluable. Despite the fact that Agnes called me 17 times that day, I decided not to answer any of her calls. During lunch, I called my father and brother to bring them up to date. I asked my father to inform my mother about this and ask her to refrain from trying to mediate between me and Agnes. It wouldn't have been easy because my mother saw Agnes as the daughter she never had. By the end of the day, I had unfinished work. Not in a hurry to return home, I decided to stay and finish it. Martha, I said, I'll leave at 5 o'clock. See you in the morning. In addition, Martha said, your wife tried to call you 5 times before noon, but I followed instructions not to transfer her calls. She seemed to understand because she hasn't called back since. My shift ended around 7 o'clock, and when I entered the lobby, Iris was already gone, and Hank, our night watchman, was sitting at the reception desk. Are you going to walk around the city on a hot night with your wife? He asked. I quickly informed him, my wife and I are getting divorced, and she's waiting outside to talk to me. I asked Hank not to let her in and to tell her that I was unavailable. I also asked him to tell her that my car is parked because it won't start, and a tow truck will pick it up in the morning. Hank nodded and assured me that he would handle the situation. I'm very sorry to hear that. Divorces are never easy. I know this from my own experience because I've been through 2 myself, Hank said. Trying to avoid unnecessary conversations, I quietly slipped out the back door and headed to Dave's diner. Finding a place where I could watch Agnes waiting for me at the car, I ordered my signature dish and watched her closely while I ate. While enjoying dessert, I noticed how she walked up to the building and pressed the call button on the intercom. Hank must have given her my message because she went back to her car and drove away. I finished my dessert, drank the last cup of coffee, and left too. I stopped by the bar to have a couple of beers. The next morning turned out to be hectic. I was in a hurry to complete all the tasks that I had neglected before meeting Agnes. I was afraid that I might be late and she would do what I had to do. I went to the bank, emptied all the accounts, took the certificates of deposit and personal documents from the safe, but left Agnes's things. I took off my wedding ring and left it in the safe for her to find. After that, I went to the waffle iron for breakfast and used my mobile phone to cancel the joint credit cards. Only Visa and American Express remain in my name. Agnes only had 2 cards in her name, so I just made sure that she couldn't use them when withdrawing cash. After breakfast, I returned to the motel, parked the car, and called a taxi to the nearest Avis rental point. I rented the cheapest car and returned to the motel. After lunch, I was relaxing by the pool and reading a book. Before dinner, I turned on my cell phone and found 9 missed calls from Agnes. I deleted the messages and turned off the phone. After a light dinner, I decided to go to the bar where a live band performed on Friday and Saturday evenings, attracting a large number of people. I managed to find a place at the bar, ordered a beer, and quickly drank half of it before I felt my shirt being pulled. Turning around, I saw Rhonda standing there and inviting me to join her table. She playfully teased me for not noticing her in a crowded bar but insisted that I join them. I hesitated, feeling like I could get in the way, but Rhonda brushed aside my concerns and invited me to sit with them. I got up from my seat and followed her to her table, where I noticed Laura and Shelby were also sitting. After taking a seat, I greeted the girls and couldn't resist making a remark. Something is wrong with this scene. 3 gorgeous women at a table alone, and you don't have a crowd of guys around you. Did you have to come for me? This is somehow wrong. The girls nodded in agreement, expressing their disappointment. We do get a lot of attention, but it's usually from jerks. They see us here, notice our wedding rings, and think we're looking for an affair. Just 3 married women who are mistaken for scammers. We're here to dance and have a good time, and unfortunately, not many guys understand and appreciate that. Some people think they are irresistible to women, and we have to fight them off. But after seeing how you behaved last night, we realized that you are not one of those. We are always glad to see you at our table. Look, I know it's none of my business, but I have to ask, why are 3 beautiful married women like you spending time here without their husbands? A logical question, Rhonda said. Laura's husband, a reserve soldier, was deployed to Afghanistan, and at home, she felt isolated and restless. To overcome her loneliness, we decided to take her outside. Since Shelby's husband worked during the day, and my husband was a trucker, we formed a close-knit group to ensure friendly communication with each other. We were united by a common love of dancing, and we found solace in each other's company. While dancing, we couldn't help but think about your story. We noticed the absence of the ring that adorned your finger the last time we met, and now it's gone. What happened? Yesterday, I filed for divorce and took off the ring, leaving it to her as a keepsake. Do you think that gives you the right to hunt? Not at all. The reason for the divorce was adultery, and I'm not going to give her a reason to counterclaim. Great, Laura replied. We have a reliable dance partner. I spent the evening dancing with them and sharing them with other men they agreed to dance with. On Sunday, I was relaxing by the pool with a book, and on Monday, I drove a rented car to work. I was hoping Agnes wouldn't see my car and think I'd left town, which meant she'd stay away during the week. Agnes called me 6 to 10 times a day, and I ignored all the calls. Twice she tried to call from unfamiliar numbers, but as soon as I heard her voice, I immediately stopped the conversation. Every evening, I would definitely go to the bar to have a couple of beers. On Wednesday and Friday, I would find Rhonda, Laura, and Shelby there and join them for a drink. On Wednesday, we danced until 10 o'clock, and on Friday, we stayed until closing time. I thought Agnes would realize by Saturday that I wasn't going to talk to her, so I returned the rental car and drove my own to work on Monday. Unfortunately, this decision turned out to be wrong. Leaving the building in the morning, I noticed Agnes's car parked next to mine. When she saw me approaching, she quickly got out of the car and stood at the driver's door of my car. "We need to talk, Rob," she insisted. Ignoring her, I tried to open the door, but she blocked my way. "Come on, Rob. You have to let me explain everything." I pushed her aside, causing her to stumble and almost fall. By the time she regained her balance, I was already in the car. I rolled down the window and sternly told her, "Agnes, you should go back and carefully read the letter that was attached to the divorce papers. I will only communicate with you in the presence of my lawyer, and even then, we will only discuss the details of our divorce." "Divorce? I don't want a divorce, Rob, and I don't need you, Agnes. It's over. Accept it because my decision has already been made." With that, I rolled up the window and drove away, leaving her alone. It became clear to me that Agnes was not going to put up with my refusal to talk to her. After I left work on Tuesday, as I was approaching my car, 2 men grabbed my arms. I recognized them as those who were with Agnes in our bedroom. One of them warned me not to resist, saying that Agnes wanted to talk to me and I was being awkward. But they still insisted that I go with them. Even though I was only a few years older, they called me the old man. Probably when they saw me in a suit and tie with a briefcase in my hands, they decided that I was easy prey. But I knew I could handle them. They didn't expect an old man like me to resist, and I could take them by surprise. It would be easy to take down one, but I was sure I could handle the other one-on-one. The commotion would attract attention and interfere with their kidnapping plan. But then I started to doubt. Do I really want to escalate the situation? If Agnes did this, what will she do if I send these 2 back to her bruised and beaten? Reluctantly, I let them walk me to my car and sat between them, putting my briefcase on my lap as they drove me home. Once inside, they directed me to a chair and made sure I stayed seated. "Agnes has made it clear that we are not going to divorce," one of them said. When I tried to get up, 2 men forced me back down, warning me to stay put. Agnes said that we would stay married, but there would be some changes in our lifestyle. "I apologize for the fact that you had to find out about my health problems," Agnes said. "But now that it has become known, we will have to put up with it. You are very dear to me, and I want you to know that I am not going to give up on us. As for health problems, it's a strong attraction to intimacy that I can't handle. I've had it since high school, and it manifested itself when we first began an intimate relationship. Although there are medications to help deal with this, they have undesirable side effects that I don't want to put up with. Besides, I like being like this. I have a strong desire for intimacy, and it is important for you to understand this. I always show you affection and attention. My actions do not cause you any harm. I care deeply about you and pamper you endlessly. If you could satisfy me all the time, I wouldn't be looking for pleasure anywhere else. Unfortunately, this is not the case. I have needs that need to be met, so I share my intimacy with others. It doesn't mean that I love them. I just look at you and always come back to you. That's how it should be. I have drawn up a prenuptial agreement stating that I am allowed to have multiple partners to maintain mental health. If at some point you decide that you can no longer put up with this state of affairs, you agree to leave the marriage without property. What will I get in return, except for the terminated marital rights? You will still have the same loving partner that you have had for the last 6 years and whom you previously called perfect despite my actions, which now cause you concern. You once considered our marriage and life together to be flawless. The only problem is that your ego gets in the way. Someone else is now using what you've always considered exclusively yours. It's important for you to understand that our lives will continue the same as the last 6 years. This does not mean that you have become less important to me. You are an incredible lover who always leaves me completely satisfied when we are in intimate proximity. But you can't satisfy my needs as often as I require. I'll make a deal with you, Agnes, and I'll sign it if you agree to make some adjustments." "What adjustments?" "I refuse to be intimate with me on those days when you are with others, and we sleep in different rooms. I can't handle it. I need you to be next to me in bed. Can't you see that I love you and don't want to lose you?" "It's all right, Agnes. You don't need to change anything. I didn't want to sign your contract anyway." "Okay, I'll make the changes and think about how to get it back later. I'll go to the computer, make changes, and come back right away." I struggled to get up from the chair where 2 men had forced me to sit. I informed them that I needed to go to the bathroom, to which one of them suggested that I just wet my pants. Miss Agnes told you to stay where you are until she lets you get up. A few minutes later, she returned, read the document to me, and asked me to sign it. I told her that her friends were preventing me from getting up, and she allowed them to let me go. I got up, walked over to her, put my briefcase on the table, and took the pen from her. But instead of signing the document right away, I decided to read it first to make sure it matched what she explained. I grabbed the note, grinned, tore it into pieces, and threw it in her direction. Grabbing my briefcase, I headed for the exit. Agnes's voice rang out, ordering 2 men to stop me. They rushed towards me, but I quickly turned around and swung the briefcase at the head of the first man. He fell to the ground from the impact. The second man was caught off guard, which allowed me to quickly deal with him as well. I punched him, causing him to stumble backwards, and then kicked him in the groin, causing him to fall. Realizing that I needed to keep them incapacitated, I continued the attack, violently kicking both of them. I alternated blows to their sensitive areas to protect myself until Agnes finally screamed, "Stop, Rob, or I'll use a gun." She threatened, pointing the gun in my direction. I defiantly challenged her, "Come on, do it." I took out my mobile phone, dialed the police number, gave my name and address, and informed the operator that my wife had pointed a gun at me and was threatening my life. After receiving instructions from the operator to remain calm and not escalate the situation with my wife, I hung up the phone and sarcastically said, "Agnes, thank you for speeding up the divorce process. The divorce course will be much faster and easier if you stay in prison, Rob. Most likely, when the police arrive, they will arrest you. You were furious with jealousy when you found out that your wife was talking to 2 men, as a result of which you attacked them with physical violence. If there are 3 witnesses, you will be charged with assault. Agnes, why did you do that? But what about your love for me? Don't worry, Rob. I'll help you. The lawyer won't press charges, and everything will be settled. But let's think about it, Agnes. Hank and Joyce witnessed how these people picked me up and brought me to your house. They will confirm that I was not here of my own free will. They will tell you that you brought me to your house against my will, and when I tried to leave, your companions tried to stop me. When they failed, you pulled out a gun. I can spend the night behind bars, but when my witnesses testify, it will be you who will be behind bars, and I will definitely not bail you out. Let's look at the charges: kidnapping, unlawful detention, threatening with a weapon, and knowingly false statements to the police. Perhaps there are other charges that you have not considered, Agnes. The most reasonable solution is to remain silent despite my advice. Agnes and 2 of her accomplices lied, and I ended up in prison. In the morning, I called Tom, informed him about the situation, and advised him to contact Gaston Marshall to get the tapes and take the necessary measures. Agnes found out that she would not be able to post bail for me until I appeared before a judge who would set bail, which would not happen until Monday. Fortunately, Tom had a connection with the assistant district attorney, to whom he showed recordings of the incident at the house. The tape showed Barry and Tony holding me down while Agnes pointed a gun at me, and the assistant district attorney overheard her plan to lie and get her accomplices to do the same. As a result, when Agnes arrived at the courthouse on Monday for a hearing on my bail, she was immediately arrested. Arrest warrants were issued for Barry and Tony, and by evening, they were behind bars. I refused to post bail for Agnes, and her parents didn't have the funds to pay for her. Agnes hired a lawyer who informed me that the guarantor wanted me to use my house as collateral. I laughed at this suggestion and stopped the conversation. I left the motel and returned to my house, where I changed all the locks because Agnes threatened me with a gun. Tom managed to get a protective order against Agnes. If she somehow managed to escape from prison and got within a foot of me, she was in danger of immediate arrest and return to custody. Both Barry and Tony decided to cooperate with the authorities and extradite Agnes in exchange for leniency. Agnes insisted that she never intended to harm me but only tried to protect her friends from my aggressive actions. After reviewing the recordings, the jury concluded that her declarations of love for me indicated that she was most likely telling the truth in an attempt to prevent harm to Barry or Tony. As a result, the threat charge was dropped from her. Despite this, she was found guilty of unlawful detention and making false statements to the police, as well as a number of other minor charges. The judge sentenced her to 9 months in the county jail and 1,000 hours of community service. After her release, while she was incarcerated, my divorce went smoothly, and the only thing I lost besides Agnes was 20% of the value of the house. I deposited the money into her bank account and then headed to the bar next to the hotel where I was staying. Fortunately, Rhonda and Shelby were there, and I invited them to celebrate their newfound freedom with me. Laura was absent because her husband had returned from a business trip, and she was busy. When I was asked why I wanted to celebrate with them, I simply replied, I want to take a chance. I noticed that Laura and Shelby have rings, but you don't have them on your finger. I don't see any signs that you've ever worn them, so I don't think you've ever had a trucker in your life. Besides, I've always liked attractive redheads. Rhonda giggled and replied, You've got me figured out. I grabbed Rhonda and took her to the dance floor. Pride was born in my heart when I saw my daughter rounding second base, but my excitement quickly turned to worry when the outfielder got tangled in the ball and threw it back into the field. Despite the proximity to the target, Brooke did not hesitate to rush to third base, almost catching a throw from left field. I held my breath, knowing that I had repeatedly reminded her to avoid being the first or last out in the inning. At third base, the fans on our side of the field let out a collective sigh. In the bottom of the 9th inning of the district championship game, the score was even in the second overtime. Brooke's early triple gave her team hope. As a lifelong baseball fan, I have never felt such excitement and nervous tension as I did at that moment. My daughter was determined to win, even if she had to carry the team on her back. The next batter hit the ball from 3 pitches, which further increased the tension in the game. At that point, we had a runner on third base with 1 out. The next player hit the ball towards the third baseman, who played quickly. The third baseman, an experienced player, noticed how Brooke was returning to base and with a little effort threw the ball to first base. Meanwhile, Brooke was running to home plate. I was speechless, feeling a lump the size of an apple in my throat. Time seemed to slow down when the first baseman caught the ball and passed it to the catcher. When the catcher picked up the ball, Brooke slid to the back of the court. The moment was painfully close. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the judge's decision. Time seemed to drag on endlessly until finally, he made a movement with outstretched arms, palms facing the ground. Chaos ensued, and tears flowed down my face. I watched as Brooke's teammates pushed her from behind, wrapping her in a tight hug. I was overcome with sympathy for the opposing team, which fought valiantly. In the end, only one team could become the winner. This is the harsh reality that accompanies the game. Sitting in the car and watching Brooke stroll through the parking lot with her teammates, her laughter and jokes filling the air, I couldn't help but marvel at her beauty, intelligence, and athleticism. I felt like I was being overwhelmed by a wave of love for this amazing girl. "Hi, Daddy," Brooke greeted, climbing into the passenger seat. "How did you like the game?" I chuckled when she mentioned playing third base. "Brooke, there are certain truths in baseball that always stand. It's just one of those things. I didn't make it up, but it's a fact." Then she asked, "What about the fact that my arm hurts and I don't think I can hit another batter, let alone another inning?" Realizing the urgency of the situation, I knew that we had to act. "In this inning or face serious consequences, we'd better put ice on it today, Brooke," I advised, surprised by her pain. "I didn't know your arm hurt. Did you tell the coach?" "No, Dad, that would put her in a difficult position. She would have to pull me out, and she would have no one to put on. Nancy is suffering from a sprained ankle, and Stephanie has the flu." Despite their setbacks, Brooke enthusiastically announced that we would be heading to the States next week. This news was a welcome change from thinking that the season was coming to an end. Looking at the child sitting next to me who used to be under my care, I couldn't help but be amazed. I remember changing her diapers, teaching her how to ride a bike, throw, catch, and hit. Now she is the star of her school. She led them to victory in the district competitions and got a place in the States. I couldn't help but feel proud, knowing that I had played an important role in her success in school and sports. "Daddy, where are we going?" Brooke asked as we passed the turnoff on Highway 6. "We're going to celebrate our victory in the neighborhood, honey," I replied. "I heard that the new Hilton Hotel in Wilspar has one of the best restaurants in the area. I think we both deserve a hearty dinner, a big steak with baked potatoes for me and a lobster for you." Brooke laughed. Dad, you're the one who likes steak and potatoes. I'll order a lobster, and maybe you should wash down your steak with a mug of frosty MGD. Dad, that's a great idea. Brooke laughed after your suggestion. Brooke, I'm thinking about it. You're brilliant. Yes, I'm aware. The idea of recycling these beer cans has been stuck in my head for a long time. Dad, you have to be a fool not to understand your preferences. You're not as unique as you think you are, Brooke joked. When we entered the restaurant, there was already a queue of people waiting for a table, which stretched for 10 minutes. I was given a device that lights up and vibrates when it's my turn, while Brooke went to the ladies' room. I settled down on the next bench. It wasn't until she returned about 5 minutes later that I realized tears were running down her cheeks. Worried, I asked, Brooke, what happened? Does your arm hurt? What's the matter, honey? Sobbing, she explained, you know, Mom couldn't come to my game because she had to go to Philadelphia for work, right? And then everything became clear. Brooke, I understand that your mom has a difficult job at an insurance company and she has to travel a lot. She really wanted to attend your game, but her busy schedule doesn't allow it. Don't worry, honey, most likely she will be able to come to the States soon, but Brooke screamed, I don't care if she ever comes to my game. Let her go straight to hell. I was shocked. Brooke never spoke ill of her mother or used such expressions. Although she sometimes heard them from me, her sudden outburst was shocking to me. Daddy, you're as blind as I am, she added, but Mom didn't go to Philadelphia. She's inside with a man, holding hands and laughing. It was a shock to see my wife, Brooke's mother, getting involved with another man. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me. Brooke hugged me tightly, and tears streamed down our faces. How could such a happy day turn into a nightmare so quickly? I managed to pull myself together and returned the vibrating alarm to the waitress, after which I calmed Brooke down and led her to the car. I helped her into the car and got behind the wheel, unable to start it as my vision was blurred by tears. We sat in silence in the parking lot for an eternity until the emotions of nausea, shame, and fear began to subside. I wiped my eyes and tried to focus, quietly asking Brooke if she was sure it was her mother. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, I suggested, trying to calm her down. It could have been someone who just looks like Natalie. Maybe that's what you saw. That's right, Dad. What? I do not know what my own mother looks like. There should be several thousand purple Lexus SUVs with license plates bearing Nat's last name, like that one over there. I must have imagined it, Brooke screamed. I looked in the direction she pointed and saw Natalie's car a few rows ahead of where we were sitting. It was impossible to make a mistake. I'm sorry, Brooke. I guess I was just trying to deny that this could happen to me, to us, I apologized. It's clear that your mother is at the hotel. She deceived both of us and is unfaithful to me. We need to recognize this reality and decide what to do next. At that moment, my phone rang. I already knew who it was even before I looked at the screen, Natalie. I didn't want her to know that Brooke and I had found out her location and actions. I needed time to plan our next steps. I replied as calmly as possible. Hi, Natalie. Hi, honey, Natalie chirped. How was the game? I'm dying to know who won. We managed to snatch a victory, and now we're going to the States next week. I have to admit, Brooke has really improved her game. Can you give her the phone, dear? I want to congratulate her and let her know how proud I am of her. I wish I could be there, Natalie lied. She's with her teammates right now. Natalie, I will definitely pass on the message, I assured her. Are you in Philadelphia now? Yes, I'm driving down Broad Street now, Natalie chuckled. The traffic is pretty slow, so I decided to call you and find out how it went. Just be careful in this new car, Tim. You drive your Lexus, right? I asked. Of course, Tim. I love this car, it's incredibly safe and doesn't consume as much gasoline as your Ford, she teased. Well, I have to go, Tim. I'm almost at the hotel. I love you, and I'll call you again tomorrow, she promised before hanging up. I glanced at Brooke, who seemed to be on edge, but then she snorted and smiled at me. Who needs this woman, really, Dad? Brooke asked, not expecting an answer. We can live better without her, we just need to clean our tongue, I reminded her. I raised you better than that, I scolded gently. I'm sorry. I was just angry, Brooke admitted. I feel better now, but I'm worried about you, Dad. At first, I thought that my gain was insignificant to her. Instead of supporting me at the county championship, she chose to sneak off with someone else. Until that moment, I hadn't thought about how hurtful her act was. It really hurts. I'm at a loss what to do next. Betrayal overwhelms me, and I can't think clearly. Dad, would you really tolerate her disrespecting us? I think you would have thrown her out the door quickly. Her disrespect for you and me is unacceptable. Do you think this lie will be enough to file for divorce from her, even without a boyfriend? Brooke asked. It seems so, I replied, but over the years, I've learned that it's better to think carefully before acting hastily. I can always file for divorce later if necessary. Hey, Dad, do you have a spare key for Mom's car? Brooke asked. Yes, but why do you need it? I asked. I think this could be the last piece of evidence proving where Mom is, Brooke explained. I handed Brooke the key and watched her walk to Natalie's car. She pressed the key fob button, and the headlights blinked, confirming her suspicions. Without hesitation, Brooke got into the car and drove away. I quickly started my car and followed her. It wasn't long before she pulled into the parking lot of the Best Western Hotel, where she waved at me from the driver's seat. When she reached the back corner, she jumped out and walked over to my car. She pressed the button to lock Natalie's car and then got in next to me. This is just a glimpse of what Mom's life will be like, the daughter scoffed. Just think, when she won't be able to find her car, she won't be able to claim it was stolen in Philadelphia. Her story will unravel when she is questioned by the police. If she reports the theft here, she'll have to explain why the car was here when she said she took it to Philadelphia. Lying only makes things more difficult. I was torn between feeling proud of Brooke's brilliant idea and wanting to make an appointment with a psychiatrist. After stopping at Burger King for fries and a hamburger, we headed home, where Brooke started asking thought-provoking questions. One of them sounded like this: how long do you think Mom has been cheating on you, Dad? Do you think she has a lot of experience in this matter? What do you think motivates her to do this? Is she too obsessed with the desire to engage in intimacy, or something else? What is your relationship with her in this regard, Brooke? I've been thinking about this. She's been very attentive to my bedroom needs lately, which I can't complain about. I have no idea about the frequency and duration. I've never considered her particularly promiscuous. I confess, it never occurred to me that anything could be wrong. I suspect it started when she began acting seductively towards you. Women sometimes do this to alleviate their guilt. When did she start? Brooke asked. Probably around Christmas. I thought everything had been going well for the last 5 months. Natalie was more distant than usual, but she seemed eager to make things right. I admitted it seemed natural to discuss such personal issues with my daughter. We've always been close, and it's only brought us closer despite the fact that she was only 17 years old. Brooke showed a level of maturity that was impressive in her house. Talking about sex life has never been forbidden. Both Natalie and I believed in being transparent and candid when talking to Brooke about this topic. Our goal was to tell her about the potential risks and consequences of having sex at a young age. Brooke even reminded, Brooke, let's talk about the importance of regular health checkups and the potential risks associated with certain health conditions, like sexually transmitted diseases. It's crucial to prioritize your well-being, especially when it comes to intimate matters. If you plan to maintain a close relationship with your mom, it's essential to consider taking precautions. However, I understand your concerns about purchasing contraception, as it may raise suspicions. Your mom may not be oblivious to certain matters, so it's important to handle this situation with care. Let's focus on your health first. I'll make sure to schedule a checkup and find ways to keep your mom occupied while we navigate through this. Dad, please take care of yourself because I'll need your support more than ever. Brooke was resolute in her decision to move in with me if I chose to divorce her mother. She expressed confidence that our marriage would end in separation despite my hope for reconciliation with Natalie. Brooke understood my gentle and kind nature, but she also recognized the difficulty I faced in accepting the truth about her mother's deceit, extending beyond mere infidelity. She predicted that it was only a matter of time before I acknowledged her mother's departure. I pondered how many other men found themselves in similar situations to mine, as Brooke became my steadfast confidant. she prevented me from crumbling, urging me to approach situations logically rather than emotionally. She always prioritized my well-being and harbored no ulterior motives. Could anyone have wished for a better source of support? The next day, I scheduled an appointment with a doctor. After work, I went to pick up Brooke from school. Arriving a bit early, I observed the girls during their practice session. Other parents showered Brooke with compliments on her performance in the last game. While I felt proud of her achievements, it only underscored the dissatisfaction I harbored in my marriage. Around 7, Natalie appeared at the door. Despite my efforts to greet her warmly, it felt forced and insincere. I wondered if Natalie would sense my unease, but she quickly dispelled any doubts. "I've missed you so much, Tim," she exclaimed. "I'll show you just how much later." She casually inquired about a spare key to her car. "Of course," I replied, taking the key out of my pocket and handing it to her. "Did you lose yours?" I asked. Natalie quickly replied, "No, otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to get home, right?" She explained that she needed a spare key in case of loss. I nodded understandingly and handed her the key. It seemed she had found her car but was now cautious about its movement, as if on edge. Brooke entered the room and greeted her. "Hi Mom, how was Philadelphia? Did you have a good time?" "Sure, here's the corrected version." Brooke was surprised at how much fun she was having. "These meetings are long and difficult," Natalie said. "They're not fun, okay?" "Mom, it's long and hard but not fun, I get it," Brooke replied. "Why do you keep working if it's so hard?" "What is it?" she asked. "Dad earns well, and you're smart. You could find something to do that will give you more free time to spend with us most of the time," Natalie explained. "I love my job," she continued, "and besides, I won't always spend that much time traveling. I think everything will settle down by the end of the year. After that, I'll have a lot of time to spend with you, just wait and see." Natalie carried her small suitcase into the bedroom and closed the door. Brooke invited me into the kitchen. "Did you hear that, Dad? It looks like her partner will move out by the end of the year, and then you can leave your mom. How do you like it? Lies and potential sexually transmitted diseases for another 6 months, and then it's all over, unless of course she finds someone else. Can you handle it?" Brooke asked. I told Brooke that she understood too much from one sentence. What she said may not be the whole truth. "I grew up next to you, and I know how you think," Brooke claimed. "Mom thinks she can have an affair, and next year everything will go back to normal, and no one will get hurt," she asserted. I did not agree, saying that I would not be able to live a day in this situation because it was too much stress for me. "Dad, the situation won't change until you act. Such problems do not disappear on their own," Brooke insisted. That evening I told Natalie that my back and head hurt. Despite this, she still wanted to help, even offered to make love. It took me a lot of work to convince her otherwise. It's a shame when you have to reject the courtship of your own wife. This is the reality of my life. The next evening, as I watched Brooke's team finish training, I couldn't help but notice that some of the girls' mothers were more sociable than usual. Brooke noticed it too and mentioned it when we were returning home. "Daddy, did I really see Emily's mom holding your hand and leaning towards you while talking to you?" "What is it?" she asked. "It seemed to me that she was deliberately pressing her breasts against your arm," Brooke continued. Then Brooke noticed how Mrs. Thomas offered me a sip of her soda, which further confirmed her suspicions. "It looks like you've suddenly caught the attention of the parents of the softball players," she remarked. I must admit, it seemed strange to me too. I couldn't get rid of the feeling that these women were being too friendly for some reason. "Maybe they see you as potential prey since you're about to become a bachelor," suggested Brooke. "What do you mean, Brooke?" "They have no idea that I'm going to be a bachelor soon, and I doubt very much that there is a lot of demand for me," I replied. And then Brooke dropped a bombshell. Last night in the locker room, she told her teammates that her mom was cheating on me. Emily and Steph, whose fathers have left their mothers in recent years, obviously considered me as a potential stepfather. Their mothers seemed to agree with this, she revealed. I was stunned by Brooke's revelation. "Why did you share such personal information with them?" I asked. "Not everyone needs to know about our personal lives." I feel extremely uncomfortable about this situation, Dad. Have you thought about what other people might already know? Wouldn't it be even more shameful not to notice what everyone else knows? The girls already know about it. Trudy's mom saw your wife and another man enter the hotel room during a conference a few weeks ago. The only change is that other moms know that Trudy's mom knows about infidelity, so it won't seem like they're the only ones to blame for the breakup of our family. It's time to admit that our family is already in a pretty deplorable state, Brooke reasoned. Brooke thought about it, calculating how many times it takes to shock a person for this to become the norm. The realization that others know that I am a cuckold has only increased the feeling of hopelessness. Any remnants of pride were completely destroyed after the events of this week. Nothing could confuse me anymore. And then new revelations followed. Sarah has been complaining about her father's absence from home since the winter. She recently announced that they would be moving after Thanksgiving, as her father's insurance company was moving him to a new location. Last night, Trudy's mother saw Sarah's father picking her up after training. To her surprise, she recognized him as the man who had been involved with her own mother. Curious and suspicious, I walked Sarah to her car tonight to confirm my suspicions. It turned out that this was indeed the same person I saw with her mother that evening. The revelation made me feel dizzy and daunted. How could children reveal so much? Was it all just a coincidence, or do our children really know us better than we think? Why did I ponder these questions if the answers could be easily found just by asking Brooke? What am I supposed to do now, Brooke? I don't think I can think straight anymore, I admitted. Well, Dad, I'm glad you asked, Brooke replied. I knew you'd get the attention of most soccer and softball moms. Today, they confirmed it for sure. You should not tolerate a woman who lies and cheats. You deserve better, and I'm going to help you find it. But first, you need to let go of what's holding you back. It was the night before Brooke's first state championship playoff game, and Natalie had to leave for another business trip. She assured Brooke that if necessary, she would drive all day to get back in time for the start of the game. This last lie helped ease our guilt. There was a knock on the door, and a bottle of champagne was brought to the room. I convinced the staff that the couple from room 402 were our close friends, and we wanted to surprise them. It all sounded very friendly and loving. When the door opened, I slipped a $20 bill into the guy's shirt pocket, took the champagne, and squeezed into the room. Brooke, Sarah, and Sarah's mom followed me into the room. Natalie was lying in bed, pressed tightly against the sheet. The guy was wearing a bathrobe and looked puzzled. I started, I'm sorry to distract you from your studies, but Sarah and Brooke wanted to celebrate their victory in the district with all the parents. It looks like you both missed Sarah and Brooke's incredible performances. Sarah hit a 2-run home run in the bottom of the 7th to tie the score and then made a decisive save in the 8th inning, and Brooke had one hitter made a triple and scored the winning goal in the 9th game. Imagine the enormous pride Susan and I feel for our daughters, and then try to figure out what you missed. The truth is that you can't fully understand because you weren't there. Susan raised 4 glasses, and I poured champagne into each of them. I managed to open the bottle just in time before room service was interrupted. I handed the glasses to Natalie and this guy to drink to the truth and the achievements of our daughters, to the new journey our lives are embarking on. Let's drink to Sarah and her mom staying put this fall. Let's drink to smart kids and experienced lawyers. Susan, Sarah's mom, and I enjoyed sparkling wine while the girls drank soda. Steve, there's no need to go home. Sarah and I will be fine without you. My lawyer assured me that I would be able to keep the house and live comfortably. Sarah won't have to change schools again. You can stay with your mistress, so I'd say it's a fair deal, Susan said with a forced smile. Natalie screamed in shock. I love you both. Please don't make any sudden decisions. It's not what it seems, I begged. Natalie's answer brought me some relief. I'm glad to hear that, I said, because it looks like you're lying in bed with this jerk, and you're naked. I couldn't figure out what I was seeing, but Brooke tried to defuse the situation. Look at it this way, Mom, she added. You won't have to come up with excuses to skip my events anymore. You can be with anyone you want without feeling guilty, and you don't have to worry about infecting Dad with a sexually transmitted disease. You'll never have to watch him devastate when he finds out he's been betrayed. I know we both want the best for Dad, for him to finally find happiness, and I believe that you will be happy now. Thank you for everything, Mom, but please don't attend any events that I participate in so as not to get into an awkward position." As the four of us left, Natalie couldn't help but cry softly. As we expected, Natalie contracted a sexually transmitted disease because, as it turned out later, Steve was a lover of corrupt love and at the same time did not like to protect himself. I hope this was a lesson for Natalie.